Sean. Well, first off, good to see you. Good to hear from you. Hope everything's well.
It's nice to be home for a couple of days.
There you go. I've been home a lot in these playoffs, but I had a 4-game first round series, 2 of them at home for the Rangers. I'm living pretty good through the first round so far in terms of how it feels. But I got a question for you. Best chance, as we record this now Thursday afternoon, best chance for a game 7 in the 3 remaining first round series. Vegas, Dallas, Toronto, Boston, which is this evening, game 6, Nashville, Vancouver. Best chance for a game 7.
I think it's Vegas. I think it's either series out west. I think they could both go 7, but if I had to put money on it, I would have to say Vegas for 2 reasons. One, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions, and 2, how many times has a coach told you it's really hard to beat the same team 4 times in a row, right?
Yeah.
The Rangers did it. Carolina Hurricanes couldn't do it, and they were certainly better enough to do it, but it is incredibly hard to win 4 games in a row against a quality opponent, A, because they're a quality opponent, and B, because they have a mental toughness and they have pride. So I cannot see the Vegas Golden Knights and who they've been for the last several years lose 4 games in a row and go out of the playoffs.
This series has just been so close. It's got to be Dallas, Vegas. And you have 2 teams in this series that if either one of them were to win this, one of them is going to win this series. And if they go on to win the Stanley Cup, and I don't care who it is, which one wins it, you would not be surprised. There would be no surprise. One of them is the defending Stanley Cup champs, and they're down now in the series. The other one is the best team in the Western Conference this season and one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. And, deep, talented goaltending is coming through. So it has to be Dallas, Vegas in terms of the 3 we're talking about that have the best chance. The thing about it, that why it might not get there, is I do wonder now with Dallas rolling a little bit, having won 3 in a row, solving the Golden Knights a little bit. I wondered after game 2 if this is just going to be a team that they're just not going to be able to solve. They struggled against them in the Western Conference Final last year too, right? Would this be the same case? And now you see a difference. Now you see Dallas pushing. You see their depth. You see their defense. You see their goaltending and how they're playing when they push. And then you see some of the Vegas warts that I thought would be coming through at the start of the series that didn't. Is that their Mark Stone is it a lot? It's a lot for a guy who hadn't played, right? I mean, it's a lot for a guy, and now that body's getting worn on again, right? Tomas Hertl, he's a guy who had never played in this type of situation with this team, also coming off of an injury. They've become a little bit of a one-line team. So that would be the thing to me that says maybe it doesn't go 7, but I got to believe in the championship caliber pedigree of this Vegas team that say they're going to push it to a 7, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win it.
Their crowd's certainly going to help. We've both been in that building. I think they're going to help. I just, like I said, I can't imagine the Golden Knights being swept, right? They're too good in every area. They're so proud. I just don't see it, but I will tell you what, the rest of the West is sitting there rubbing their hands saying, yeah, go 7, maybe go 3 or 4 overtimes, right? Because the toll that's going to be paid is incredible. We're gonna have Gus Forsling on from the Florida Panthers a little bit later. He talked about this and about what the Florida Panthers went through last year with a 7-game series in the first round, a 5-game series in the second round, and then 4 in the third round, which was really like 6 with all the overtimes. And by the time they got to the Vegas Golden Knights, they were battered, and the list when it was over was gruesome. Right. So I think the rest of the West is kind of looking at that series and knowing that they're 2 pure battleships and saying, just keep punching. Just keep punching each other, tenderize each other, soften each other up. And then whoever wins gets no turnaround and goes and plays another series and has to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. And they get the reward of winning this series, which, like you just mentioned, is going to be, has been and will be. It's going to test a lot of bodies. The reward is the Colorado Avalanche, who, if they get goaltending, Sean, might be unbeatable. Like if they can get the goaltending, the way that they have, the way they played after once they finally start to get goaltending against the Winnipeg Jets was some of the best hockey that we're going to see this season by any team, by any group of players, whatever it is. The Jets had zero. You're talking about the best 5-on-5 defending team in the Western Conference, second in 5-on-5 goals against in the regular season behind the Florida Panthers, one behind them. I think they had 121 against. Florida had 120, and they had absolutely no answer for the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche just totally took the Jets out of their defensive structure, blew it apart. The Jets had no answer, and finally, because they were able to get some goaltending, they win 4 games in a row.
I don't even know if they got goaltending. They didn't need it. Once they got rolling, they didn't need it. They were constantly in charge, and I need to fall on my sword right now, by the way, Dan. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. I banged the drum for the Colorado Avalanche all year. And then they staggered to the finish line. Their goaltender was a horror show late in the year. They lost to Winnipeg 7-0 the last time they played. I think they were playing possum. They lost home ice. They lost everything, and they lost me.
They did lose you. I remember that. They lost me too. I wasn't as high on them all year as you were, but you were, and they did lose you. I know.
And I picked Winnipeg to win, and then they went out and played the hockey that had me so excited for 3/4 of the year. Look, the Winnipeg Jets just went for baggy day, for closeout day, when they all show up and gather their stuff and, talk to the media for the last time. And Connor Hellebuck spoke, and he said that he felt great, that he was dialed in, that he hadn't felt better in a long time. And he's a Vezina Trophy finalist and probably the odds-on favorite to win it. And they made him look silly. And he didn't even feel bad. Like, he wasn't even like, if I could have stopped those couple of goals. He's like, I played really well. And I gave up 5 goals a game.
I don't know if he played really well. I will argue with him on that point, but he knows his game obviously better than I do, and he knows how he was feeling obviously better than anybody else. So I can't sit here and say he played really well and gave up 5 a game. I mean, that is what
he didn't have a chance on a lot of those goals, Dan.
Yeah, that is what
Dominik Hasek couldn't stop some of those goals. That's the kind of pressure the Avalanche put you under.
Yeah, that is what they do to you, and they will make the best look silly. That's the way they can do it. And listen, I mean, I think it's a disservice to Alexander Georgiev to say they didn't get goaltending, that they didn't need it. The same situation with Darcy Kemper, right? 2 years ago, not by any stretch was he a world beater goaltender, but you need your goalie. If you're the Avalanche, you need your goalie to make the 5 or 6 or 7 saves that you just absolutely have to get. You're going to give up 2 or 3 and you're going to live with that, but you got to make those 6 or 7 other ones that you just can't give up, which he did give up in game 1. And they scored 6 goals in the game and they still couldn't outscore the Jets. As long as he doesn't do that, as long as he gives up, I mean, heck, if he gives up 3, they're going to win almost every single game because of the way that they play, the offense that they have. I think it was game 5. You see Nate McKinnon picks the puck up, and Mikko Rantanen is on his left, and they start going down the ice, and they're just crashing through everybody on the Jets. And McKinnon then makes a perfect saucer pass over, bang into the net. It's unstoppable. It's an unstoppable offense. And then Cale Makar, my goodness, his goal, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, you'll think he loses the puck, he keeps the puck, he goes around guys, and then the shot, he puts it in a top corner where, like, it's almost an impossible place to find, and he finds it. When these guys are going like this, Sean, they're unbeatable if they can just get those extra saves and give up less, 3 or less goals.
By the way, and the last point on this, can we put to bed the narrative around Bednar that I could coach this team or you could coach this team?
No.
The job that he did, all he has to do is roll those guys out. The job that he did after what was a disaster in game 1 is unbelievable. Mentally, tactically, everything. Fantastic. It's why he's won at every level. It's why he has a Stanley Cup. And the idea that, if I had that kind of talent, I could coach him to wins too, patently false.
There's a reason he's been there for as long as he's been there. You know, he's a really good coach. He gets along with the players. The players play for him. They get better under him. This team has gotten better under him without question. And it leads me to another thing that I wanted to touch on with you. And like you said, we're going to have Gustav Forsling from the Florida Panthers on shortly here. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. They were the better team going into the series. They were the better team coming out of the series. There was no question about it. But the Tampa Bay Lightning were a team that won the Stanley Cup twice, right? They went to the Stanley Cup final 3 times. They also, Sean, just like the Jets, just had their breakup day where they had to, address some of these topics. And 2 of the topics that, 1, future Steven Stamkos, 2, future John Cooper, right? There's a reason John Cooper has been with the Tampa Bay Lightning for as long as he's been there. Really good coach, gets along with the players, gets the most out of them, gets the best out of them. And I'm sitting here wondering, going, all right, now that they've lost in the first round again, this time by 5 games, I wonder, and Stamkos is a pending or unrestricted free agent. Is this it? Like, are we going to see the turnover here in Tampa? But it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like John Cooper's got a contract and recently got a contract extension. He's signed. Julian Brisebois said he's taken care of. And Cooper talked about Stamkos like he belongs with us. This is where he belongs. To me, that's where Cooper belongs too, right? I mean, like it's this, he could be talking about himself. Maybe if Stamkos signs, he could be talking about the same thing with John Cooper. I thought maybe we'll see a breakup of this Lightning team and maybe a new era ushered in, but it doesn't seem that way. And whether you believe it's time or not, I don't know that it is. I think there's still a lot of really good pieces there, and they continue to be a dangerous playoff team. They just got beat by a team that was, frankly, that they used to be, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying is that the Florida Panthers have become the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I think sometimes as a GM, you have to divorce yourself from the emotions of it, right? It sucks to lose. It sucks to lose to a rival. It sucks to lose in that way. But I think at some point you have to say, you know what, this year they were the better team. We couldn't beat them. That doesn't fall on Coop. So, he has term left. I don't see any reason for divorce proceedings to start. When it comes to Stamkos, like everybody says they want to stay together. I guess nobody has a degree in math. How do you do this? And look, Julian Brisebois has pulled some rabbits out of the hat that none of us could think of, and he's broken up the core over and over to do it, right? He's identified who he wants, and he's let other people go, and he's found replacement pieces. This would be the magic trick to end all magic tricks, right? You're going to have to get Steven Stamkos to sign a very team favorable deal. And you're still going to have to move people.
Yes, you are going to have to get him to sign a team favorable deal, but they're in a location where a team favorable deal is still a pretty good deal. No state tax. It makes a difference. What is 8 million or 7 million in Tampa is 9 million in Toronto, or maybe 10 million in Toronto.
That number doesn't matter, Dan.
No, it does, because it keeps your number down.
It doesn't matter what he can get somewhere else, because all that matters, look, this money doesn't matter anymore, right? For Steven Stamkos and for any elite player, unless you're doing it for the first time, the money doesn't matter because you've made more money than you could ever comprehend and more money than you've ever dreamed of as a human being. What matters when you go after those contracts after that is, what am I worth to you? Here's what player A is worth to team A. Here's what player B is worth to team B. I'm better than both of them. Pay me. And that's how they measure themselves. It's not about cashing the check and putting the money in the bank. It's about looking around at their peers and saying, I'm worth this. Pay it to me to show me that you love me.
I think you're right 90% of the time, 95% of the time. I think there might be a little bit of an exception or a little bit of a difference for a guy where the market means a lot to him.
I think there is too, Dan, and I'm not trying to interrupt, but you can only drive that number down so far, and then it becomes insulting.
Not trying to interrupt. You did interrupt. I was making a point, and then you just interrupted me. I think that was kind of rude, Sean.
I'm
Well,
feeling passionate.
listen, yes, I understand, but I don't think they're going to drive the number down to that level. I think you have to pay Steven Stamkos what he's worth, and he's still, yes, he is a aging player. He's still a 40 goal scorer. I mean, my goodness, and he's still got game left, right? He's not a 40-year-old, and he's not immobile. He's a good player still, and he's a very important piece. And if you're going to try to keep running it back, you got to run it back with that guy. You break him out of it, you can't run it back. It changes things. He's the leader. He's the glue. He keeps it all together. But where they're at enables them to have a better chance to run it back that way. And then you have to, the one thing the Lightning, in terms of trying to continue to build this thing, and cannot blame them. This is exactly what they should have been doing, trading draft picks, trading that capital. They have to find a way. And Julian Brisebois, the magic trick that Julian Brisebois has to pull here is not signing Steven Stamkos. It's building depth behind Steven Stamkos that they can get that's affordable, finding a diamond in the rough, finding a Gustav Forsling. How about that?
Yeah, that is what he has to do, but I still don't understand how at any representable number with their salary cap where it is now, you can welcome Steven Stamkos back into the fold.
If he's gone, you think he's gone?
No, I don't, but it's either that he stays and the team is very different because you have to break it up, or he does go.
If he goes, where does he go?
Utah.
That would be interesting. I don't think that's where he goes. I'm going to discount that answer completely. Actually, I don't think that's at all where he goes. I think he would want to go to, well, number one, I think if he leaves, I think you'd want to go to a big market, right? I think you would go a Detroit reunited with Yzerman, Toronto. We'll see what happens, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's see how this plays out. There's a lot of change that could be coming in Toronto. We don't know, right? We don't know that's a story that's still being written right now. Nashville was another one that came to mind. Another no state tax area to go to. There's a lot that could be there. I think he's going to re-sign in Tampa, and Julian Brisebois, I think, made it quite clear that they want him back and that they're going to get him signed.
Well, of course, you wouldn't say that you can't, but now you got to make the money work. But you're right about the other thing in that they're going to need some diamonds in the rough like Gus Forsling. So let's talk to Gus Forsling and find out how he became a diamond in the rough and how he's helped this Florida Panther team not only get to the Stanley Cup final last year, but get out of the first round so easily this year and sit and wait for an opponent. He might be one of the most underrated defensemen in the league at this point. So let's talk to Gus Forsling right now.
Gus, thanks for joining us. So what's this like now as the waiting game continues on for you guys as you wait for the second round, you wait for a second round opponent as we talk right now? What's this time like for you guys?
It's been good. I think we got some needed rest and got a couple good practices in here, and yeah, we're excited. It's going to be exciting watching the game tonight, and yeah, we're ready to go.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm always curious as players, do you, especially in the playoffs, do you watch games of potential opponents? And if you do, you guys are going to watch as a team or do you watch individually? How's that all come together?
For sure. I think a lot of guys are watching the games. We're doing it not as a team, but I think everyone is kind of watching it. It's a lot of fun, especially when it's opponents, future opponents. So that's at least what I'm doing. It's good to see a little bit, and maybe you can pick up a couple stuff from the different players that you're gonna play. So it's always good.
That's what I wanted to ask you that. I mean, from when you're going to watch a game, whether it's this one this evening or any other time that you're going to play that team or one of those two teams, do you watch it differently than you would just say watch a game? I mean, if you were just watching a game as like, I like hockey, I'm going to watch a game,
yeah,
versus watching a game to pick up things, how is that different? What are you doing differently? Do you even have a pen and paper? Are you taking notes?
I don't have a pen and paper. I'm taking notes in my head though, but it's more like for me as a defenseman, I'm watching maybe some habits. The other, like for me, I'm watching like the other guy's top line and their power play just to pick up some just some habits maybe they're doing, and just see how I'm thinking how I would play that situation in my head. But yeah, so it's absolutely different when you're watching a future opponent.
Russ, does it feel different this year? Last year, you guys qualified so late, and then you had to ride the momentum of the underdog. You were down early, and this year you got in. You know, you knew you were in far earlier, and you're kind of one of the hunted instead of the hunters. Does this playoff feel different for you?
Maybe a little bit, but I think we still have the same mindset. We're still hunting because of the loss last year against Vegas. We still feel like we're hunting something, to be honest. So I feel like it's a lot of similarities from last year. We still have a lot to prove, and we got a lot of guys that was here last year that's still very hungry and want to get that redemption.
Do you ever get over a loss in the Stanley Cup final, or do you have to win the Stanley Cup to get over it?
I guess we'll figure that out soon. But no, for sure, it's very tough, and especially when you go make it all the way to the finals like that, it's heartbreaking, and it's tough, and it's hard to get over it. But I feel like I said, we have a lot of players from last year's team. I feel like we're almost the same team like last year, but it's everyone is really hungry, and we came in to training camp with that mindset that we really want it bad, and we just got a taste of it last year.
How important is Paul Maurice to the mental side of your game? We've been lucky enough to have him on the pod for a couple of times. I covered him during the Eastern Conference final and the final last year. And, you know, he just seems like such a level-headed guy, except for the rare occasion when he completely loses it. But for the most part, he seems like a really level-headed guy. And psychologically, he seems like one of the most interesting coaches I've come across in the NHL.
Absolutely. I think he's a very, very big part of our success, to be honest. He's probably one of the smartest coaches I ever met. He's very, very smart and educated, and knows exactly how he wants us to play, and it just shows. It makes it easy. Makes it easy for everyone. He's just very dialed in, and very smart, and knows exactly how to handle like situations coming up, and he's good to make adjustments during the game. We got a very good coaching staff, and he's a very big part of our success.
Gus, these can be tense times. Well, maybe not now since you're waiting for an opponent, but in a series, and you guys experienced it last year. Who's the guy on your team that keeps it loose? Who's the jokester? Who's the one that does that?
I think we got a lot of guys that does that. We have a very good group of guys that we all love each other, and I mean, we're having a lot of fun. I think Cousins is always having a lot of fun. Chucky, Monty. I think we have a lot of guys that really can get the boys going. So it's not a big problem.
I heard it was Montour. I heard it was Brandon Montour, that he might be the I could be wrong. I mean, you tell me that he might be almost like the little bit of a ringleader of the
he's for sure one of them, for sure. He's always got something going on. So we're having a lot of fun, I'll tell you that.
Gus, you eat a lot of minutes, and your role has grown in Florida for sure. I'm just curious, we're talking about Montour a little bit. You know, watching him last year, the amount of ice time that he's able to absorb. You know, you look at that 4 overtime game last year, and I think he told me afterwards that he skated more than 5 miles. Like, as a defenseman, can you look at him and see that maybe he's just a little bit different from a lot of other defensemen for whatever reason?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, he's in great shape and all that, but he's a very smooth skater, I would say. It doesn't take a lot of effort for him to skate out there, and he can eat huge minutes, as you say. So I think some guys just have that skating ability to make it look with no effort, and he's one of them.
it was no secret last year after it was done how beat up your team was, right? I mean, the list of injuries and what guys were dealing with was it was something almost to marvel at that you guys were able to play through it. You had a 7-game first round series last year, and then 5, then 4, and but over time it got really hard. The benefits of having a 5-game first round series, getting some rest, waiting for your opponent. Speak to that. Like what does that mean to this group in terms of longevity?
I think it's huge because if you go like we did last year, we had a 7, and then we played in Boston, and then we just went straight to Toronto after. So you don't get that mental break that you sometimes need, and even for sure your body is more banged up after a game in the playoffs than the regular season. It's very different. You put everything on the line, so guys are banged up, and that's huge, and we're very grateful that we got a couple days here and get to just not just get the body rested, but mentally too.
Does the fact that you've played either potential opponent matter? Is it a benefit? And when you sit and watch the game tonight, are you pulling for double overtime and then a game 7?
No, not really. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, but at the same time, we kind of want to get going too. Like, we don't want to it wouldn't matter, but I'm very excited to get going again. But it doesn't matter, to be honest. But when we're watching, I mean, for sure, we've been playing these guys a lot, so I think we know each other very well out there, both teams. So I mean, either doesn't matter who we're playing. We know both teams very well.
Take you in a different direction here. Growing up in Sweden and Linköping, I mean, playing there, when did for you the Stanley Cup become into focus as I want to win that? When did that happen for you?
I think I don't think it was that early. I mean, when I grew up, I didn't know very much about NHL, to be honest. It was more the Swedish league that I really wanted to win. But then when you grew up, and I actually remember watching playoffs hockey in the middle of the night in Sweden with my friends, staying up late. It was very exciting, and just remember watching Detroit, Pittsburgh, and all the Chicago, those series. It's nothing like it, to be honest.
Do you feel like it's come almost full circle? Now there's kids and they have more advantages with the internet and everything else, but now there's kids sitting home in Sweden watching you play in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Absolutely. I think especially those early games that they get in Sweden, and I think that's a big part of, I mean, the next generation. I think that's very big motivation, especially from my hometown. I know a lot of kids are watching, and when I'm home in the summer, they tell me they saw a game or whatever. So it's huge for those kids.
What was your welcome to the Stanley Cup playoffs moment?
Just overall, how tough it is to win a series. It's mentally the ups and the downs. One day you can think you dream of the Stanley Cup, and we can go all the way, and then you lose the game, and it's like, holy, we can be out in a couple days here. So it's a mentally tough, very, very tough ride, but it's the best. It's nothing like it.
That's the last one for me, and this is kind of I'm curious. The forecheck is such a big part of the playoffs, right? You watch every game, and the announcers like, oh, they got to get in on the forecheck, they got to turn pucks over, and it seems to me that being a defenseman, that's got to be one of the worst things in hockey, right? Because you got to go back over and over. And you just talked about how tough a series is. You go back and back over and over, and it's the same 3 or 4 guys showing up in your corner every time, trying to run you through the boards. So it seems to me it's part mental and it's part physical. But what is it like for a defenseman to be under that kind of duress for up to 7 games in a row?
Yeah, it sucks sometimes, as a defenseman. You got guys trying to run you every shift, and they can read off you, and it's a little mental game too. Like if you're coming up the strong or the weak side, it's hard, but it's such a big part of the playoffs hockey, as you said, that's what we want to try to put on the other teams. Like in the game 7, we don't want them to go back for the puck and just make a soft play or let the forwards get the puck. That's what it's all about. So it's just such a big part of it, and you just gotta suck it up.
Have you ever gone to Paul and asked if you can be F1 just for one shift?
No, I haven't yet. Maybe it'll be soon here.
That's a goal of yours.
Yes, that's a playoff
Gotta
goal.
do it. Hey, Gus, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much, and good luck with it. Good luck with the rest of the run. All right, we'll be watching.
Thank you. Appreciate it, you guys.
Sean, really good stuff there with Gus Forsling and the Panthers. They await their opponent, Toronto or Boston. Game 6 of that series is this evening as we're talking. It's several hours from now, actually, Thursday. The other series in the East is set. It's the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. It's a series, Sean, that I think we all in the hockey world have been waiting for, figuring it was definitely going to happen. These were the two titans of the Metropolitan Division. Nobody was close, and it was evidenced by the first round. The Capitals were not close at all. The games might have gotten close, but they were not close to the Rangers. They sweep the Rangers to move on. And the New York Islanders, you covered that series. They made it interesting. I'll give them that. They made it interesting, but they lose in 5 games. So they really weren't that close either. So this is the matchup that we all expected. It's happening. And you and I debated it, Sean, for NHL.com. And as we debated it, it just it crystallized even more to me just how close this is. Like these two teams are very close. They're very different, but they're very close in a lot of areas.
They're separated by 3 points over 8 months.
Right. But it's not even that, though. It's the Canes were the number 1 power play and number 2 penalty kill. And the Rangers were number 3 in both. Right? I mean, they're close in so many different areas. And there's familiarity with the coaches, which is a really cool storyline. Peter Laviolette coached Rod Brind'Amour, who was the cup-winning captain on that team in 06 that Laviolette coached. This matchup in a playoff series like this hasn't, with a cup-winning captain against the coach of that team that he won the cup with, coaching the other team, hasn't happened since 1947. I don't even know if I explained that correctly. It's a lot of different words. But there's that storyline. Vincent Trocheck, the last time they met in this playoffs 2 years ago, the Rangers won in 7 games. Trocheck, who might be the Rangers' most valuable player through 4 games in these playoffs, maybe, beyond Panarin through the regular season, Trocheck was number 2. He was on the Canes side that year. So there's a lot of different storylines, but they're just so close. This is going to be a long series.
Yeah, I can't see this series not going really deep, right? With some overtimes involved. Somebody's going to pay a hellacious price.
Yep.
Right. One of the reasons I asked Gus Forsling that question about the forecheck is because I just watched the Carolina Hurricanes for 5 games, and they are ferocious on the forecheck, right? And they make people pay a stupendous price to get the puck out of their own end. They're the most aggressive team on the forecheck that I've seen in a long time. So, and the Rangers are no slouches. There's going to be a price paid to get on offense in this series, and it's going to be cumulative, right? You think about it. It's not that hit in the first period of game 1. It's the 87th hit in the third period of game 6 that all of a sudden a defenseman is saying, I don't want this. And you saw that, in game 2, right? For Carolina, Martinook gets in on the forecheck after the game's tied, and he hits Noah Dobson. And Noah Dobson, playing hurt, I think, didn't know what to do with the puck and surrendered it. And Martinook scores the game winner coming out of the corner and stuffs it. That's when the forecheck pays off. It wasn't that hit. It was the 14 hits before it that made the defenseman think, oh my God, I don't want to be here right now. And that's what's going to happen in this series. And again, it's going to be one of those series when whoever walks away and advances and says, woohoo, I advanced, they get to play in the Eastern Conference final, and they are going to be knackered.
You know, and hearing you talk about that and, you know, just watching Carolina over the years under Rod Brind'Amour and the way they play. I was talking to a few guys today when I was at the New York Rangers practice. You know, it's a very hard way to play too. It's hard to play against, but it's a really hard way to play. It's not just that forecheck. It's the one-on-one defending all over the ice, right? And you know, you can break down one-on-one defending all over the ice and get some pretty good chances if you're doing it right, if you're connected, if you're funneling pucks to the net, because that'll break down any defense. But from Carolina's perspective, it's a hard style to play, and it makes me wonder if that's the reason why this team has run out of steam in the playoffs and hasn't gotten over that hump. You know, they've reached the conference final twice under Rod Brind'Amour and didn't win a game either time. They were eliminated in Game 7 by the Rangers 2 years ago in a 6-2 loss in Game 7. It wasn't close. So if you can withstand it, and if you're good enough, the Islanders weren't good enough. Okay, they were just not good enough. We know that through the balance of the regular season. The Rangers are. If you're good enough to withstand it, if you're mentally tough enough and physically tough enough to withstand it, then you might be able to outlast them. But you have to, like you were to your point, John, you have to be able to withstand it. And that's what makes it so challenging. But I think it makes it challenging for the Hurricanes too. And that's why the Rangers, if they get into a long series, I think it actually might benefit them.
The Rangers played the Hurricanes 3 times this year.
Correct.
They scored 4 goals.
They won 2 of the games.
Yes, they did win 2 of the games. They scored 4 goals.
They did.
The reason that the Carolina Hurricanes didn't advance last year is because they couldn't score a goal. They lost 4 one-goal games to those Florida Panthers that we spoke about. 1 in overtime, 1 in 4 overtimes. The goal that they needed never came. They made moves to address that this year. They got Jake Gensel and they got Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov scored the first goal in that series, set the tone, and has completely surprised me in how integrated he is into that team. He was the guy that after they won Game 1 called the team out and said that was not good enough, right? And that is not what you normally see from a guy acquired at the trade deadline with some baggage.
But he's won the Stanley Cup.
Exactly. Exactly. And so now they have players that can get that goal. Seth Jarvis has grown up. They have other players, you know, that can get those goals, that have been through wars. Now, there's no team in the NHL that has more players that have played 50 or more playoff games than the Carolina Hurricanes. They are seasoned. You know, Gus Forsling just spoke about the disappointment of losing. They've had that disappointment. They're fueled by it. I think the difference now is that they have a belief that they can get that goal that they need. They were down a lot to the Islanders in that first round, but when they went and got a goal, and then they went and got another one in 9 seconds. So
yes,
I think they're a different team.
I think they're a different team too. And that's why I think this is going to be a great series, and it could go either way. 100%. One of the differences though is the Rangers know they can get that goal. They don't just have to have the belief. They go and get it. They routinely do. Now I'm going to throw some cold water on what you said about the regular season and them scoring 4 goals. The first time they played was a 2-1 Rangers win on November 2nd. That was the night that Philip Hedl and Adam Fox got hurt. Okay. So the Rangers, for half that game or more than half that game, were playing without 2 guys, and they won 2-1. The second time they played, January 2nd, was when the Rangers really were starting a downward slide that lasted for the balance of the month of January. It wasn't a good game. Peter Laviolette addressed that the other day, actually. He was talking about their regular season. He said, we were on our heels that game. We were not good. It was a bad game, just a throwaway bad game. And those happen, right? The third time they played, the Rangers won 1-0, and it was on a back-to-back with travel for them, where they were going into Raleigh, and the Canes were sitting there rested, and the Rangers still beat that team, that aggressive, forechecking, plays the same way every single night, no different. You know exactly. They beat them 1-0. That's a little bit of cold water on the 4 goals because there's circumstances in the regular season that are not the same as they will be in a playoff series. There's other circumstances in a playoff series that are not even close to what they would be in the regular season. So there's a little bit of that. I think the Rangers' belief on their power play, they looked more dynamic towards the end of the season and certainly in the first round against Washington on the power play than I'd seen them all year, and they were elite on the power play. And that their ability to pounce and generate offensive chances on the penalty kill is a very dangerous part. They pressure. We talk about the Canes pressure. The Rangers pressure on the penalty kill will, if done right, will cause havoc. And they have guys, Trocheck, Kreider, and Mika Zibanejad, and Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider play it together on the PK that generate 2-on-1s off of their up pressure up high. It's going to be something that the Carolina Hurricanes know they're going to have to deal with. And if the Rangers do it right, they're going to be able to stop that or at least generate offensive opportunities on their PK. Those things could make a difference here. And the other one, I know Igor Shesterkin's going to be in net. And I know he's going to be good. If he's not, it'll be a surprise. Freddie Anderson has been really good since he came back. There's always that thought of Freddie Anderson, like, is he going to be able to make it through the series, right? I mean, he did through the Islanders series. He's always a little bit injury prone. So you got to give a little bit of a balance there to a little bit of an advantage, I think, to the Rangers as well. So really tight, though. The margins are really thin.
The Rangers power play can be as dynamic as it wants. Doesn't matter if they don't go on the power play. And they don't score. And they don't score 5-on-5. So, and the one point that you do make is Freddie, and it's going to be a soap opera. It was for the whole first round. It's going to be a soap opera for the whole second round. He had never played back-to-back games since coming back from his blood clot issue. Never played 2 games in a row.
I know.
Then he did. He hadn't played 3 games in a row since the playoffs last year. Then he did. And then to everybody's surprise, he played in the afternoon game on game 4. And then they came back after 2 days rest on game 5. They're going to ride him as long as he can go. But at some point, it's uncharted territory for him. But they have a really good backup in Kochetkov. So, but their goaltending will be a soap opera through this whole second round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great series. You want to hear more about it? Darren Millard, our good buddy, who does the Chirp podcast, he had Marty Necas on from the Carolina Hurricanes. They're forward. So you got to listen to that one to get more insight into the Carolina Hurricanes. Marty Necas joined Darren Millard on the Chirp podcast. So listen, I think we covered a lot there with Canes Rangers. We don't know when it's going to start as we talk here on Thursday. The thought is Sunday. We'll see. Madison Square Garden also has another team that's playing in it right now. I believe they're called the New York Knickerbockers in the NBA. So there's some issues there, but the thought is Sunday. It's going to be a great series, no question about it. The Edmonton Oilers, Sean. Let's go west. Let's go to the Edmonton Oilers because they did what I think we thought they were going to do. Right? They go out. They were a better team than LA, and they beat LA. They beat them in 5 games. I think the Kings put a little bit of a scare into them at times. They had the lead in game 5, right? Then they committed penalties, and my goodness, you can't do that. And Edmonton goes 1 for 5 in game 5 on the power play, but 2 of their goals are even strength goals scored as the guy is pretty much coming out the penalty box door, right? I mean, you can't commit penalties on this team. What did you think of the Oilers in this series and now a carryover effect it'll have versus who they play, either Nashville or Vancouver? Because to be honest with you, Sean, I think that they will have the advantage no matter who they play. A, those 2 teams are battling it out, right? Could go 7. And just B, I think the Edmonton Oilers, in winning that series the way I think we thought they would win it, was also a gut check way. They figured out another way they can win in the playoffs, and that's a 1-0 type game, and they won that too. And that's got to make them feel confident, especially when you go against either one of these 2 teams. If it's actually going to be Nashville who has to come back, I mean, they're going to limit 5-on-5. They're going to try their best to just limit the Oilers 5-on-5. But the Oilers won a 1-0 game against LA where Stuart Skinner had to be great, and they were limited 5-on-5, and they only had 13 shots on goal, and they won it anyway. And I think that's huge for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, mentally, it's going to be big for them. Look, whoever wins this series to play them is traveling around the world, especially if this goes to a game 7. Like the travel of this series is crazy. We can ask our colleague Adam Killerman, who is not flying charter and is flying a commercial coach, how debilitating of travel it is. And that's going to play a huge part. There's no question about it. You could say, oh, they're professional athletes, they fly charter. I don't care, man. That's a lot of miles to put on your body and a lot of sleep disruption to put on your body. And it adds up. But I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to be confident. I think they should be confident. They're really probably the best team in the league since they switched coaches, and they look different in these playoffs. To me, the LA Kings were the Washington Capitals, right? Like
I agree.
how can you read what the Rangers are after playing the Capitals? So it wasn't a challenge. I don't, you could talk about a 1-0 game, but the Kings never really scared you. Even when they had the lead in game 5, were you ever biting your nails and saying, oh, now here's where the series is going to change? No, and I think the Kings are going to have to make some changes. They tried last year. They keep playing the Edmonton Oilers and they keep losing. And they knew last year that one of the reasons they lost was their penalty kill, and they tried to fix it, and it didn't fix it all. And that might be something that might have something to do with the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I think they're better than Washington, but your point is well taken. Like that is it's a hard to judge. But at some point too, and I think of this with the Rangers too and the Oilers as well, like you won a playoff series. It was playoff hockey. It wasn't easy. And you were able to go out and do what you needed to do to find ways to win. And there's a lot to take from that. You're not going through the battle that Vegas and Dallas are going through, or that Florida, and Gus Forsling talked about it, right? Went through with Boston last year. That's not happening, but you are going through playoff hockey. And for one of the things I said after the Rangers beat Washington, and I kind of feel it with Edmonton as well. Like your reward for playing really well in the regular season was that was your reward, right? And now it gets harder, but it's not like that was easy, but that was your reward. And you should be able to take some, something out of that. But most importantly, what you do is you take the measure of confidence. And like I said, the Edmonton Oilers a year ago, heck, the Edmonton Oilers in October, November, there was no way that team could have believed that they would win a 1-0 game, that their goalie would get them. No way that they would be able to believe it. Well, they now know that they can do it. And not only can they do it, they can do it in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And that's huge. And the other two teams that are one of these two teams that they're going to play, I mean, look, the Vancouver Canucks are finding ways without their number one goalie. Not the easiest thing to do. How long are you going to be able to do that? And Nashville, it just doesn't generate a lot. It just doesn't generate a lot. So they're going to have the advantage either way. It's not. Both of these teams are better than the Los Angeles Kings, but we're not exactly talking about a team that's got a Stanley Cup pedigree either that the Oilers are going to face.
No, not at all. Look, the Edmonton Oilers have the easiest road to the conference final. Yeah. And
they will be playing a team with a Stanley Cup pedigree potentially in the conference final.
And you talk about rewards, but it's somewhat, there's some vagary there, right? Like,
sure,
the Dallas Stars were the best team.
Yeah, well, it doesn't always work out.
And what did they get? The defending Stanley Cup champions, right? Like it doesn't always work out. The Boston Bruins were in line for the President's Trophy until the last week of the season, and they got the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like it doesn't always work out. And sometimes those teams that aren't very good are playing really good at the end of the season. I don't think it needs to be changed. I think it's fine just the way it is. You need to beat 4 teams to win the Stanley Cup. Doesn't matter what order they're in. But sometimes the best team doesn't have the easiest road.
Right.
And Edmonton has been blessed in that they have an easier road, especially now with Thatcher Demko hurt and no idea when he's going to come back.
Yeah, no, and that's good for them, but they've got to take advantage of it. No question about it. All right. Before we get out of here, a little bit of coaching news. David Quinn out in San Jose since we talked last. Dave Haxtell out in Seattle. Did the Haxtell one surprise you, Sean?
No, it didn't.
Surprised me.
It didn't surprise me because they made the playoffs last year, and this was clearly a step back, and they were wildly inconsistent. They had 2 8-game losing streaks, it was disastrous for them. And a lot of players took a step back. They had career years last year, and that's why they got
That's
to the
it.
playoffs.
Yeah.
But they took significant steps back. They looked somewhat rudderless.
Dave Haxtell can blame the Vegas Golden Knights for this, right? He can blame the Vegas Golden Knights because they went to the Stanley Cup final. They did better than Seattle did in year 2, and they did it in year 1. And then they took a slight step back. They took a little bit of a step back, and then they fired the first coach that they had there, who was building and growing with it, in Gerard Gallant. And he was never meant to. Dave Haxtell was not going to be there for, he's not going to have a John Cooper run unless he was, winning every year, winning the cup. But, he was given a team his first year that was an expansion team and acted like one. I mean, not act like, played like one. Second year, every single guy on the team had a career year. Everybody had a career year. The third year, some of them didn't. They didn't build on their career years, but maybe that they're never going to build on those years. He doesn't have an outstanding player. He doesn't have a game breaker. And they took a step back. Like, it's a little bit of a roster build at the same time, and the coach takes the hit. I get it, but that's why I guess it surprised me a little bit there. I thought he might be given one more year. I thought a 100-point season and a playoff win would not only buy him this season, but at least the start of next season too.
I didn't buy it. There's some good coaches out there, right? I think there's a thought process of, hey, let's get in line pretty early, and see what happens. And there's just an impatience, right, in the market. I think they had the opportunity to win over the market. They had the outdoor game, all of those things. I just think that Ron is probably looking for a more dynamic coach.
Yeah. Well, he needs some more dynamic players as well. So that's his job, as well as finding a new coach. But they're not in it right now. But we got a lot of teams still playing. Second round will begin soon. First round still going. As we talk now, the potential for 3 Game 7s. And Sean, you and I, we've reached the end of the podcast. I think neither one of us changed our opinion from the start, right? Dallas Vegas is the one.
Yeah, no, for a Game 7 for sure. And if things break right, Dan, there's a 50-50 chance that the At the Rink pod will become a road show.
Right.
Together.
That's right. Rangers Canes covered by you and I.
Possibly. I might end up going somewhere else, but there's a good possibility I'll be on the Canes like I was for the first round. And I just want to say that as much as they're going to beat each other up, we're going to beat each other up. So the podcast in week 2 of that series is going to be a must listen, because it's going to be ugly by then.
I'm going to tell you right now, early in the playoffs of doing this, early in that series, I'm getting the Rempire on my side. Matt Rempe's on my side.
You do that. You always need a second, Dan.
All right. This was fun. A lot of hockey coming at you. Enjoy the hockey.